Watch this.
With mental health concerns on the rise, along with those who struggle with it, lawmakers took action on the House floor to try to narrow the gap in resources for students. However, a few believed it a bridge too far. Polarized. To be on the opposite ends of something. It's no wonder the word polarized is thrown around when it comes to today's politics. Far right, radical left. But who decided which direction means what? It took a mutiny against the monarchy to make it happen.
Mackay today. A community rooted in heritage today, Mackay stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of its people.
Hold up. You know what Mackay is not rooted in, nor does it stand as? A place that calls itself Mackay. We're going to help you say it in the latest edition of How Do You Say It? So this past weekend, they held the boys' state basketball tournament. Thousands of kids, whether on the court or in the stands, piled into the Ford Idaho Center in Nampa to play, to watch, to cheer on their high school team. What if I told you for every 10 of those kids, 4 of them have struggled with moderate to severe depression? 44% of high school students, according to a survey done by the Boise School District a couple of years ago. And 33% have thought about suicide. That's just one of the reasons the Boise Youth Behavioral Health Initiative was launched last fall, to address this and to provide parents with resources for mental health. Teachers and administrators have made it clear, schools, they do not have the resources they need to deal with these needs. But this is obviously bigger than Boise, which is why lawmakers at the State House are stepping up to fill in those gaps, hopefully. Joe, what are the lawmakers focused on with this topic, and what happened today? Because this is something that is kind of moving forward a little bit.
Yeah, and really what this is about is getting resources into Idaho classrooms. And we talked about Boise, but we're really meaning the entire state here. So getting the right resources to students, that's what this legislation is all about. And we know that there is mental health conversations, but getting resources like counselors and trained therapists into schools, it's not a snap of the finger trick. But what if needed experts could connect with students at school digitally? So House Bill number 684 looks to create a code for optional behavioral health telehealth services in public schools, as well as charter schools. Legislation essentially would allow public schools in Idaho, not force, by the way, to provide access to behavioral health via telehealth on their premises during a school day, so a student wouldn't have to miss any school time. The mental health professionals providing the services, they would be selected by the student and their parents. The school would have nothing to do with that. So if a school district wants to do this, students would be supplied a closed room for sessions and technology to connect on, Zoom or WebEx or whatever, to chat with a doctor or a counselor that they need to connect with.
Kids are already getting bullied for so many things. And when they get bullied, they need services like this.
This would provide another opportunity for access and ease the burden on the family to be able to help the child.
This is an opportunity to expand capacity to support our students across the board, and it's done so under the direction of parents. That's the critical component here. A student will never find themselves in a telehealth session on a school campus unless a parent has requested it.
There are kids in our school systems that need that help, and if we can get them that help, that is what we should do. So I will be giving this a green light. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so those are the supporters. So the critics of the idea, they worry that schools are going further and further away from the role of being education institutes. There's also questions about the content of the sessions that would be allowed to happen on school grounds. For example, it was brought up, what if there's a transgender student that is getting a session on their transgender care? One lawmaker also asked if this would make things worse for students.
I'm just concerned that our schools are not doing their primary responsibility, which is reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're getting into all different venues that our schools they're basically becoming the nanny state to take care of every little issue. And I just think this is a slippery slope with continuing to push other things in our schools that's not dealing with the primary responsibility of what our schools should be doing, and for that I'm against this bill.
We're putting them in a room that all the kids know that they are going there for counseling, which is going to lead to more issues, possibly bullying. And so are we perpetuating the issue by doing this?
So again, the legislation did pass in the Idaho House this afternoon and now heads to the Senate. Again, Brian, a real piece of information here. This would be an optional thing that schools could do. There would be no school districts that would be forced to allow students to do telehealth during the day.
How many voted against this bill?
Only a handful. I think about 13, maybe a dozen, yeah.
Safe to say that those that voted against it are the same ones that would say it's not the guns when it comes to school shootings, it's the mental health that's the problem?
Yeah, we'd have to look up at those two votes, which would be interesting to see who voted for what. But yes, very specific segment of politicians that voted no on this today, and we heard some of their concerns.
Interesting. All right, thanks, Joe. You know, there are times where talking about politics can sound like you're giving someone directions. Left, far right, radical left, center right. Maybe that's why it's more like twister instructions, maybe. Left, center, blue, far right, red. Either way, when we say right or left in a political context, most tend to know what and who you're talking about. Democrats, well, they lean to the left, this left. Republicans range toward the right. But why? Who decided which side is which? Where do we get these directional affiliations? Joe Paris gets into the middle of it.
Call it teams, call it tribalism, call it politics. There are defined factions across American politics, and it trickles all the way down to the smallest units of government. The directional lexicon of the left versus the right. Well, it's right at the center of it all. But how did directions get so ingrained into politics?
It goes way back. My understanding is that it goes back to French Revolutionary times.
Dr. Charlie Hunt is a politics expert at Boise State University. He takes us back to the late 1700s. Napoleon Bonaparte was the big name in politics.
You had supporters of the revolution seated on the left side of the chamber, and you had supporters of the monarchy and folks who did not want to have a revolution on the right side of the chamber, and seated in different areas into their separate silos.
So when did those terms, left and right, hop the pond and enter American politics?
It's certainly been in American politics for at least the last 100 years. This use of saying someone's on the left or someone's on the right. Of course, where we tend to hear it used the most, and this is not new, is as a pejorative.
Dictionary definition of pejorative, having negative connotations. So left and right, they're not really loving labels in most cases. But the meaning and connection to Democrats and Republicans, it's a moving historical target.
Even in the last 50 to 100 years, it was not always clear, for example, which party was the left party, the progressive party, the party more eager for change or for bigger government. Not all of those sort of labels were associated with the left or the right at any given time. This sort of new evolution of what it means to be on the left and on the right is relatively new.
These days, Republicans are commonly referred to as the right, Democrats the left. A major change from the early days of America.
Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt were both Republicans. Certainly Roosevelt was a progressive. He called himself a progressive. Whereas you get Franklin Roosevelt, his relation, 30 years later becoming president, a progressive himself, but he was a Democrat.
Unlike decades past, the current left and right party lines are a hard break, making definitions or characterizations on left versus right. It's more polarizing than ever.
There are books to be written about, and that have been written about, how the two parties are coming to resemble two sports teams, right down to the colors and the mascots. And that becomes easier to do when on the left-right spectrum you are farther away from each other, because it makes you feel different from each other in a way that makes you really want to beat the other side, really want to triumph over them.
Simple explanation there. Dr. Hunt says the division continues to get splintered, especially during an election year. But let us remind you, there was a time when the wedge between the left and the right wasn't so wide, when members of the legislative branch could actually come together in the middle to make productive policy. This Congress, the current one, the 188th Congress, is on track to be the least productive in decades. For example, the House voted on bills, about 749 of them. 749 times they voted on bills last year. Only 27 of those went on to become law, which would be the fewest number since the Great Depression. All right, we're also keeping tabs on what is happening just across the western border in Oregon, who is now reconsidering their decision, or its decision, to decriminalize certain hard drugs. From the 208 to the 541, Abby Davis has what else you need to know in today's 411.
A Delaware man is in the Ada County Jail after an early morning shooting that left one man dead. Boise police says it happened just after midnight at an apartment on North Lake Harbor Lane. They say officers found a man lying on the ground with a gunshot wound to his stomach. He was taken to the hospital, but later died. 24-year-old Javon Harmon was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. It's unclear if the suspect and victim knew each other. An Oregon bill aimed at recriminalizing hard drugs is on its way to the governor's desk. House Bill 4002 creates a new class of misdemeanors in Oregon, with jail time possible, although people can still avoid jail through a combination of probation and drug treatment. Democrats and Republicans in support of the bill praised it as a bipartisan effort that better represents what Oregonians really want compared to Measure 110, which made possession of drugs a $100 fine and a health assessment. Opponents call the bill a return to bad policy. WebMD, the health information website, said on Friday it's buying Boise-based nonprofit Healthwise Incorporated, which is a patient and member health education and engagement company. WebMD Ignite will now serve more than 650 healthcare organizations, including more than 50% of hospitals in the U.S. The CEO of Healthwise said in part every effort will be made to integrate existing Healthwise employees into WebMD. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Davis.
Near the base of Mount Bora, there's a town with a rich history in copper. Well, it's had to make a name for itself once the mining went away. But that name, while simple, hasn't always been simple to say. Which emphasis on which syllable? Is there another Idaho place you've never known how to say? Let us know, or let us know about anything else we've talked about today. You can text us to the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Always include your name and the hashtag the 208. Clean, concise, and clever? Well, that's the simplest way to see yours shared at the end of the show. William Shakespeare penned the phrase, "What's in a name?" putting up the possibility that while they may be good at knowing who's in what picture, names may not have much worth besides that. Well, there are many places around Idaho that would argue that's not the case. Kuski, Kamiah, or Cooterville, to name a few. There's another place that sits at the base of Mount Bora, which is the tallest mountain in Idaho, which is known for its location, but not necessarily for its pronunciation. We head to the Lost River Range for today's How Do You Say It? A quick internet search for the history of Mackay. It's a small town in Idaho, and you'll discover this.
Nestled amidst the rugged beauty of the Lost River Valley in central Idaho, the town of Mackay bears a rich history.
But the link
and the birth of Mackay, the
bears a bogus inflection.
Pivotal moment in Mackay's history.
Okay, that's
Led
not...
by mining magnate John W. Mackay.
Look.
Further fueled Mackay's growth.
That's not how you say it.
Mackay Reservoir.
Please just stop. So, to get the correct articulation, hey there, we asked someone actually in town. How about now?
Okay, yeah.
Marie Rossi.
I am in the mansion.
The owner of the Mackay Mansion.
The Mackay Mansion. Mackay.
Mackay.
Right.
Have you heard it like various ways?
All the time.
All the time. All right.
Mackay today.
Nope. And here's why. In the late 1870s, copper was discovered in the White Knob Mountains, which spawned the White Knob Mining Company and the town of Houston. The president and general manager of White Knob, that'd be Wayne Darlington, well, he needed a way to get the copper out of the valley. So he convinced a prominent investor out of California to chip in.
So John Mackay was one of the Bonanza Kings.
Soon came the Oregon Short Line Railroad out of Blackfoot, but the tracks pushed 3 miles past Houston, closer to the copper smelter. A new town sprang up around the new terminal.
So Mr. Darlington decided to name the town Mackay after John Mackay.
And by 1901, the town of Mackay was officially incorporated.
Okay, again, that's wrong, but also kind of correct. By 1901, Mackay was making strides as the hub of White Knob mining, with a population of more than 1,200 people. And the following year came the 7,400 square foot Mackay Mansion, bought by Marie 7 years ago.
Mr. Darlington had this house built as a company house, and this was the cushy place for all the investors to stay.
Except for one prominent investor, John Mackay, who never stepped foot in his surnamed city and died that summer in England. Mackay isn't a mining town today.
This is a beautiful place to be. If you like to hunt and fish and do outdoor activities, this is the place to be.
But you can still stay at the company house.
It's old. The flooring's all old upstairs, which is really cool. The woodwork has never been painted. It's really cool. It's like when you walk in, you went back to the 1900s.
Like to when the town got its name.
Mackay's history is a tapestry
that's not-
woven with threads of mining booms,
Just-
economic hardship,
you should stop.
and unwavering community spirit.
So when people call it Mackay, what are you saying?
I'd leave it unless they're going to be here a while, and then I tell them it looks like that. So
A little more than $2 million was made in copper more than a century ago. It kind of dried up in the 1920s. And they may not mine copper anymore in Mackay, but they are still making money on what comes out of the ground around the White Knobs. Several years ago, they started bottling their well-known spring water. Proud Source is the company name. Same water that comes out of their taps in town. They say once you taste it, you'll never want to leave Mackay. Summer and fall might be the best time to make a trip to Mackay. They have a PRCA rodeo that's been around for 74 years, happens every Father's Day weekend in June. Best time to climb Mount Bora, that is late August, early September. And then this September, that's going to mark the 85th annual Mackay Free Barbecue, where they feed thousands of people. Tons of meat, it's Mackay's treat, they say. Mackay, not Mackay. Though a couple of years ago, Will Farrell in Idaho was on a trip to Idaho, on a fishing trip to Idaho. He stopped by Perk's Place in Mackay to shoot pool. Will's production partner is Adam Mackay. So, man, now you can see it. Or is it Adam Mackay? No, it's Mackay.
So I have a window outside. It's still snowing there. Here's our window into the mountains so far. Look at this, 24-hour snow totals. Now, Soldier Mountain has 7 inches, but Bogus Basin, 12 inches, Tamarack, 10 inches. Of course, Soldier Mountain, there was 7 inches. They could have more. That's the report that I had. Brundage with 8 inches, and you see Sun Valley with 6 inches of new snow. It's been quite a storm for most of those mountain areas. If you look outside, it's still quite a storm. These roads, of course, I'm just showing this because the roads are wet at this point, and the only concern is if the storm pulls out, some of our models are showing as early as 3 o'clock in the morning. Could clear out a little bit, and those temperatures will really drop. And when they do, that could make for some icy spots. Even some black ice could be in areas for tomorrow morning. Kind of the most dangerous mornings for Idaho. We had one just a couple of mornings ago, but when we look at this for tomorrow morning, try to be careful with that, okay? So rain, snow at the first of the month. We've got this trend going on. The first week to 2 weeks of January, as you know, with all the snow, was one of the wettest. February, the first 2 weeks was one of the wettest. We had a pretty big storm with the rain and snow. And then that's what's turned out to be so far in the month of March. Yeah, temperatures, that is precipitation's been up to 0.36. The normal is 1.33. So we've got about a fourth here for the month so far, but we still have the month left, and it's a big one. That was the case of January. We did well with the amount of precipitation for January and especially for February. And at the end of these months, like January, at the end of January, we had a high temperature of 66. At the end of February, we had a 63. What could we do sometime here in the month of March? That still is yet to come. Now, when you look here at our radar, and we go out a little bit wider, you'll see the storm system coming in from the west. You say, boy, is it going to snow for a long, long time? This is where it's coming out of, out Northern California. And you can see that it's moving up toward Boise, okay? Our radar just picks it up out here about Burns as it starts to come in. And when you look at our futurecast, it comes in from the west, but you see it's that sagging from the front that brings this down. And eventually, even at Twin Falls, it's gone by later tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow night. Now, when we get into tomorrow morning, it should be gone, okay? And like I was teasing earlier, depends on if you sleep in or not as to if you're going to see this. But watch those roads if you're really traveling because it could be slick. And watch for the temperature. We've got a low tonight down to 25. But during the day, some sun will come out during the day. More sun for Thursday and Friday. It's going to take a while to get those temperatures up. Then as you continue into Saturday and Sunday, look at this. Highs are getting into the 50s. Next week, even though we have some rain, we could get very close to the mid-50s.
All right, before we get to your comments, I want to clear something up. When talking about this Congress that's in session right now, I mistakenly said 188th. It's the 118th Congress right now. That really isn't doing much. All right, let's get to your comments. This one from Doug. It's a little bit longer, but it's interesting, which is why I wanted to share it. I'm one of those guns aren't really the problem. It's the people behind the guns and mental health people. Maybe schools shouldn't necessarily be responsible for treating kids with mental health issues, but that doesn't mean that professional mental health services can't happen within the walls of the schools. I think it can. That's where the kids are every day. Why not? Asks Doug. It did pass the House floor and moving on throughout the State House. I find it odd that those who are so worried about what children read or believe are against children getting help when they need it. What is wrong with this picture, says BNB. Legislature actually voted for a bill that could help people. They should just go home tomorrow before they ruin it or get a reputation for being too progressive. That's from David in Boise County. Why can't we get rid of political parties and have people run on just their beliefs on issues? I vote for whomever I like better on issues, even though a lifelong Republican. Oh yeah, the general public would actually have to pay attention instead of just voting party lines, says Colleen in Boise. Pretty much it. When was the first time that states identified as red and blue states, asked Scott? I'm guessing pretty much about the time we started figuring out what states voted for which president, Republican or Democrat, as those colors started being used. Governors as well. That's kind of how that works. Pejorative, I've learned a new word for the day. Now, how in the world do we all return from the fringes and back to the 50-yard line? That's from Arnie in Eagle. Du Bois, Ledor, Kuski, those are also often mispronounced. We've done stories on all of those, Marty, in Meridian, as well as this one. Mackay is kind of like the town in Oregon. Wallowa, I messed that one up a long time ago. Wallowa, now I think I finally got it. How about this one? Is it St. Mary's or St. Marie's? We have to call somebody up there to find out. That'll be our next one, so stay tuned. You can find all those stories on our website, ktvb.com.